Cool. We are live, I believe. You're the expert streamer, not me. So the start of mine kind of fumble a little bit, but yes, we are live on X, and I've shared it. We're live on YouTube and my Twitch, which has no followers and subscribers, but that can be archived for my future pleasure.
Awesome.
Cool, Chris. Nice to meet you, because this is the first time we've actually spoken.
For sure.
Outside of DMs. For those that are watching that don't know who I am, I'm Dan, developer advocate, roadmap.sh, number 7th project on GitHub, 1.2 million users, free, open source, developer education. We got a new roadmap coming out soon, Redis roadmap, I believe. And our last one was Git and GitHub roadmap. So go check that out when you can. Chris, would you like to do a small introduction on who you are and what you do currently? Feel free to plug GitKraken as much as possible.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Chris Griffing. I stream on Twitch as CM Griffing. I've been doing that for about 6 years. I work at GitKraken, and it's my first time as a developer advocate, so I'm kind of like getting the feel for it. But the goal is to make content, so that really lines up with some of the Twitch streaming stuff I've been doing. And yeah, GitKraken is basically a platform that consists of a desktop application, a CLI, a web app, and GitLens for VS Code. So basically, all these things come together, and we have features that really just help people be more collaborative on their teams. And we basically want to be wherever devs work, rather than like forcing them to use a desktop tool.
What's a GitLens?
So GitLens is an extension for VS Code. It's one of the like recommended extensions when you install VS Code. And I actually installed it years ago. Forgot that I had it, and then when I install like a new machine, I always forget, and like I don't have the inline blame or like the gutter stuff, and like just so it's pretty much to me an essential extension for VS Code.
Yeah, and you mentioned this is your first dev advocacy role.
Mm-hmm.
It's mine as well. We will rewind back to the start of your career, but it's interesting. Like I'm going to make an assumption that you chose this new career path because of your love for creating content.
Yeah. I just really enjoy making videos, working on code on stream, like doing all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to try my hand at it and get better at it. And I'd been kind of doing some developer advocacy stuff on my own time anyway, like making YouTube videos, like speaking at conferences and meetups. And so I figured if I'm doing that as a hobby, I might as well try and make some money off it too.
I think that's like the main thing. Like for me, and I'm sure Cameron will maybe watch this, who's the founder of Roadmap, by the way, and my boss. I was advocating. So I was an engineering manager prior to this, after being an engineer myself, and I was always advocating this platform. Always to like any of my engineers, you want to learn something? Here's a roadmap. Go learn it. And then they offered the job up of developer advocate, and I thought time to get paid for all this free marketing. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And somebody follows you on Twitch.
Awesome. Yeah, how's it going? Nana Popoa.
Cool, Chris. Let's rewind time back to the beginning. Let's focus on your education. So, what did your education look like in terms of what you decided to pursue education-wise? We don't need to know about like, which clique you were in and stuff like that. But like, what did you choose to pursue if you did do any higher education?
So I did do some higher education, but there's a big 10-year gap between high school, etc. So I'll start out at high school. In high school, I was a bit of a slacker. I was a snowboarder kid, skater kid. And I could ace my tests, but I hated doing homework. So I didn't really have many like college prospects after high school. So at that point, I decided I would just snowboard for 10 years. During high school, though, I had a computer animation class that was fantastic. We started out in Flash doing 2D graphics, and I learned to do a little bit of like scripting in Flash. And then I was able to like keep taking that class, and eventually there was like 4 seats for 3D Studio Max, and one of those freed up, and I got to get it. So I had stuck with that for another like year, just like 3 trimesters, just fiddling around in 3D graphics.
Sorry, did you say that was before your snowboarding, or?
So I was snowboarding in high school, but this is before I did like the 10 years of just being a snowboard bum.
So are you saying your first, like the first line of code you wrote was during that animations class?
Maybe there might have been some like an HTML class. I forget the exact timeline there. And I had always been kind of messing with things because like I'm 40 now, so I had a GeoCities page, so I was doing some HTML there, right? So I think GeoCities was probably the first code that I wrote.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know if you know Kyle Tryon. He's prolific around the social medias. I was speaking to him before, and him and myself and a few others came to the conclusion that a lot of people like our age, I mean, me and Kyle are 33, so we're a little bit younger than you, but still like older in terms of like engineering now. MySpace was like the first experience, like the customization of that homepage. Yeah,
Yep.
if you knew basic HTML, you could elevate your profile above the rest, definitely.
Yeah, like really the technology at the time wasn't good enough to abstract that stuff away from us yet. So I had to learn HTML for GeoCities, and then I had to learn CSS for MySpace. So it set me up to be a web dev basically.
Yeah, I guess I guess that's why a lot of us probably got into it, to be honest, at that point. So after, let's explore that snowboarding 10 years. Was it like professional, or was it just...
I never got a paycheck for snowboarding, but I did end up getting sponsored and getting free gear. So basically, graduated high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that Mount Hood, you can snowboard all summer. And it's actually like the best of the best in the world go there because it's the only place in the continental US that you can actually snowboard all summer long. So I went down there, kind of like stretched the truth a bit into my first like line, or I was a pantry cook, which is basically like salads and the amuse, and it was at a fancy restaurant. But the only cooking I had done before that was like filling in at the Target like food court. So I kind of like fibbed my way in, and they needed someone immediately, so they just gave me a chance, and that was great. And then from there, the person who was leaving for vacation came back a couple weeks later. I ended up getting into prep cook work, and then after the banquets and stuff died down for the summer, I ended up doing dishwashing. So like 3 totally different jobs ish during like that summer, and really like learned how to move around the kitchen and learn some like really cool techniques for cooking, which is cool.
Which you still use?
Yeah, I like to cook my own meals. It's great.
Awesome. So you got to snowboard for like all summer, and you also now know how to cook professionally.
Exactly.
Win-win. So let's talk about after the snowboarding. What happened where you left snowboarding and entered what?
So basically, during the 10 years I was snowboarding, I would go from Stevens Pass during the winter to Mount Hood during the summer. I would ride like 150 days a year. That takes a toll on your body. I've broken my collarbones. This right shoulder dislocates. We have a pretty popular clip on my stream from it happening live on stream. And, like I was starting to feel the age a bit, and I realized that I needed to do something else. So I ended up, I had already kind of been working on my friend Snowboard Shop's website. We had a WordPress blog. I fiddled with and did a really poor execution of like combing the XML data from the weather station to like give us like a cool little like thing on our website for like what the weather was. And I had done a little bit of that just like self-teaching on my own because I had fiddled around with copying and pasting Flash scripts beforehand. I was like, how hard could it be? Well, it turns out I was really bad at it back then. But because I was like already doing a little bit of web stuff, I figured I could do it for a job. Why not? And I had seen that my mom, who was a programmer, she did more like SQL stuff at the time. She was working from home, and that sounds great. Like, do you mean I could maybe keep snowboarding and just work from wherever? That would be the dream. So I started getting into web dev, and I did a 2-year program that took me 3.5 years because I did like I would skip semesters. And I did a 2-year program called an Associate of Applied Science that was focused on web technologies.
Did you end up being able to snowboard and work?
Not as much as like I dreamed back then, but I have actually taken a couple like meetings from the mountain during my career, which is nice.
Damn, living the dream there.
Yeah.
So where did that take you? Because you, seeing where you are now, you obviously didn't continue just making websites for friends and family and stuff. So what changed from doing that to getting like your first, I guess, like professional software engineering job?
So I had some really good friends at the start that were like willing to pay for the work. It wasn't just like, hey, here's a free thing. So they were at least like helping fuel my freelancing career. It was really, I wasn't making ends meet that well, but I did get into freelancing, made some Magento sites, did some more WordPress sites. And I really started like being drawn to like single page applications. This was about, let's say 2012 when I finished my degree, I think. And like Ember was massive. There was like 100 people at the Ember meetup here in Seattle. Like really cool. And I started going to those. Like I learned Meteor, went to those meetups a lot. I've since like at meetups recently met some of the people that organized those Meteor meetups way back when, which is super cool. It's such a small world here in tech. But yeah, so I started like really just building out my own single page application stuff and trying to like understand that better. And, while freelancing poorly, and eventually realized, yes, I should actually get a job somewhere. And I felt like I had enough on my resume to make that happen. So I started interviewing. I went through a bunch of bad interviews, and then I went through one fairly easy one and ended up getting that job. And yeah, stayed there for like 6 years or so.
So if you can rewind like a little bit, you mentioned how like all the self-taught stuff, well, not entirely self-taught. I mean, you learned a bunch at school, right? Whoops.
Mm-hmm.
You learned a bunch at school. Then you started building the websites. Back then, and you've dated it yourself a little bit, as around 2012. I'm assuming that stuff was like 2010 kind of stuff.
So in school, there was like a little bit of like, mainly I went to Cascadia here in Washington, and they are very much like they're teaching .NET stuff because they probably get some type of like investment from Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do .NET really. Like I have, but it's not something I consider my forte. It's not what I've really cut my teeth on. So I started out my career doing mainly like WordPress, and then, or not WordPress, but like PHP in general, and moving into JavaScript stuff.
So what did you use to look? Because I'm assuming you didn't learn WordPress and stuff like at school, right?
Correct. Now, so especially because I was doing the WordPress back in maybe like 2008, I'm trying to remember the exact tutorials, etc. The ones that stick out in my mind were the DigitalOcean ones. They did an amazing job of just creating content that got really good SEO and was very like focused on specific problems and kind of like walked you through it really easily. So I learned how to like host my own droplets and, like how to do my own like VPSs using stuff from like Low End Box because I was cheap. So yeah, it was just, I did a lot of like self-learning just by Googling things. And that's why I haven't necessarily gotten onto the ChatGPT kind of train yet, because to me, ChatGPT feels like just a glorified Google search, and I'm already pretty good at that part.
Yeah, I feel like I see it a lot now in like juniors, where the ability to just search for something is very, my fiance, she's not an engineer, she's a PE teacher, but she started to like edit some videos and stuff on CapCut.
Oh, nice.
She couldn't figure something out, and my first question is always just like, did you Google it? Have you put this in Google? The answer is always no. Always no. But it is so underrated. Yeah.
I'll even have people on stream like ask for help with something, and one of my first questions is, what did you search on Google? Like they'll always say they did search, but what were your keywords? Let's actually work on your like keyword like filtering skill. Like, do you need to paste the entire file path of the thing that's failing? No, just remove that from your query, and yeah, you'll probably get better results.
Also, like what I've learned in this current job now, I do a lot of searching for like good content to add to roadmaps. And I've really learned about like actual complex searches, like using blog or article or from here to there. So you can like accurately, like people don't really know that. I think like with Google, it's not, you can use actual like search terms to like find a video on a certain topic from a certain year, and it will show you it all, right? Like,
yep.
So yeah,
Yeah,
A
I
lot of people,
definitely use some of like the advanced tools for like maybe getting something within the past year or so, right? Like just to make
yeah,
sure you're not getting something from 2010 that's related to a really old version of PHP or something.
yeah. I mean, all you got to do is a from keyword. That is it. It's like from colon date, and yeah.
Okay, so I just use the GUI, but yeah, that makes sense too.
Oh yeah, I mean that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah. So you said you were at that first job for like 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? That first professional one. I'm interested into when you decided to start creating your own content.
So that's actually kind of a funny story. So I had remembered hearing that Sean Larkin streamed on Twitch. He wasn't actually streaming programming when he did it. He was streaming like Rocket League or something. But that was like my introduction to what Twitch even was. And Sean Larkin, if anyone doesn't know, creator of Webpack, and that was just cool to me. So from there, I was at this like agency for 6 years, working on all sorts of different projects. Really fun. Got to do like some really, really cool projects. And then I had a friend who ended up going to Beam, which ended up becoming Mixer, like, the Twitch competitor back then.
Mm-hmm.
And they got me an interview. And I did all right in one of the parts of the interview, not great in the other. But during the like one of the social like interview parts where I'm talking to the previous like the owner of Beam who got bought by Microsoft. So I don't know what his title was at the time, but very cool dude, very young kid. The history of Beam is really interesting, but I'll skip that for now. Basically, he was saying it would be cool if you streamed because then you would understand our customers better, right? You would understand our users better. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I could do that. So then I started looking into streaming, and I had been watching some like gaming streams, but I had seen Adam13531 was his old name. He's Adam Learns Live nowadays. I saw his stream, and he was just sitting there working on projects and engaging with his audience and chatting, and it looked really fun. And I was also remote at the time, so it seemed like a good way to like kind of get some of that social nature too.
It's interesting you say that because that happens now a lot, isn't it? You've obviously got the big guys that do it, right? And obviously you're included in that now as well, which must feel strange, I imagine.
A little bit.
But Coolify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that guy, Andreas, he streams every day. Just him working and interacting. Like great. Such a good thing to do, I think.
And he just recently started too. Yeah, it's just really cool. I love the idea of building in public, and I think building on stream is like the most extreme way of building in public. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to you that can do it. Like we do like a Discord call on Roadmaps Discord every Wednesday. I'll like build one of our example projects live. And I struggle to just write a basic script on stream. Like
there is something about the pressure, but the more you do it, the less pressure you feel,
Yeah, I imagine. Cool. So you're a dev advocate now, but you were a software engineer. You did the 6 years. What happened after those 6 years?
So after those 6 years, I ended up kind of like working with one of our like clients at that agency, but they had like a stipulation that they could hire engineers. Like maybe it was an old contract, something. So I ended up working for that company. It was a life insurance company, building out their entire like web app, like basically solo. They had their back end people doing the Lambda stuff. And like from there worked at that company, then took like a year off between that, worked at another company called Fairwinds, and then took about 6 months off. And here I am at GitKraken.
Awesome. Like, so let's talk about this role now. Like you've done content creation.
Mm-hmm.
You've done software engineering.
Mm-hmm.
How is the role you're doing now? How do you think it's shaped up from what you thought it was? Because I feel like dev advocacy is completely different everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure you're doing completely different things to what I'm doing. So I just wonder sort of how it shaped up to what you thought it was, and if there's elements of it that you aren't that proficient in, what steps have you taken to be proficient?
So, yeah, when I was like interviewing for this role, and I had interviewed for a bunch of other dev advocate roles too. They were looking for people with more experience, even though I feel like I was doing that on my own time. This one, they were very heavy on, this is just about making video content, right? Blog posts, sure, they're great, but they already have people who make tutorial videos, who make blog post content, but they aren't devs. So they wanted someone who was an engineer and could actually speak to like our users' personas, right? To actually like understand devs better and to speak to that and make content for that.
So that's like, I feel like that's exactly what it should be. Because, we have a DevRel roadmap that we created like a month or so ago.
Oh, cool.
And in writing that, I discovered that this whole sort of industry was actually created by Microsoft and Apple in the 80s when they had the massive like platform war of the 80s. Like Microsoft created the first developer evangelist team when they were doing just that. Like the standard marketing team was not enough,
right,
to like get to the developers that they wanted to use Windows. So they ended up having these teams of like 80s developers just making video content to like lure in engineers, I guess. And then Apple started doing the same thing, and then they created this whole thing that exists now, really.
Yeah, and they started doing like conferences, like the Steve Ballmer like developers thing, right? Like all that,
That's the sweaty guy, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's a brilliant one. I've seen that a few times.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Also, I mean, we've arrived at the end of your career path.
Yeah, kind of.
Now, I mean, there's no, just to stipulate, there's no time limit or anything for this call. It's all about finding out your career path and how you got there. I would wonder, you went from engineering to developer advocacy, but what happened between having that last software engineering job to being a developer advocate? You say you took 6 months off, right?
Something like that. Yep.
So what was you obviously made a conscious decision to start interviewing for dev advocacy jobs.
Yeah, I'd actually tried to do it like a couple years before as well. So I've interviewed for developer advocacy at a few companies. The big reason was I just wanted to. My goal was to be able to do my job on stream. I haven't been able to do as much of that on my Twitch streams lately, but there is still like room for that. Like at Get Kraken, my goal is not to write code, which that's what I like to do on my stream. So it's a little tougher. Just recently, we've been doing some live streams in which they were actually on board. Like, yeah, just write some code, do whatever. I have some conference talks coming up, so I've been like prepping for those. Like, yeah, so we did streams for like 2 hours last week for like a promotion we're doing called DevX Days 24. And then yesterday I also did just like a longer stream, kind of like putting together my slides a bit for SquiggleConf, which is coming up.
Now, I feel like I need to watch those streams, because I was about to ask you then, like you mentioned prepping for a talk. What's your process in doing that? Because I feel like a lot of dev advocates that watch this will want to know. And I myself, I have a talk at the Excel Arena in London in October. And I haven't started planning the talk yet. I have the topic, but I haven't started planning it. And you've done a few, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what's your process to planning a talk?
So it depends. Like I've done it a few different ways. Sometimes I have a project I've been working on and I extract a talk from like that learning. For this one, I've wanted to use this thing for ages and didn't have a good excuse or reason for it yet. So XDism is the tool that I'm talking about. It's basically a way of making a plugin system for your applications using WASM as like the intermediate layer. So you could write in maybe like 10 different languages and, consume those into like even more languages, because, all you need is a WASM runtime. And if you can compile the WASM and run that WASM, then you're good to go. So yeah, it's really cool. I've been wanting to mess with that for ages, ever since hearing about it. And I proposed a talk by just doing like the title and the abstract and sent it, and it got accepted. So now I have to do it. So yeah, basically, proposal-driven development.
Baptism by fire.
Exactly.
I feel like I'm in the same thing here. I got asked to do a smaller talk, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, if I agree to it, I'll do it, and it'll be good. Then it was cancelled, but moved
Okay.
to the Excel Arena,
Okay.
which is like where I've attended conferences. Like, right. So now I feel like it's a bit. I don't know. I've done a lot of public speaking before, like in the military and stuff, but this context is a bit different. Like, these people don't have to listen to me.
Right.
Whereas, like in the military, if I tell someone to do something, they kind of have to do it, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
I feel like, they've already like selected for being someone that's willing to listen to that stuff though. So it's like way less stressful than maybe having to speak like when in school, right? No one actually wanted to be there, right? In high school at least. So presenting to that is so much more stressful than presenting at a meetup or a conference where they're there voluntarily at least. So, if they wanted to be presenting about the topic, they would be.
True. Very true. Okay, I have a final question
Sure.
for you, and that would be if you could, let's say, and I'm sure they have done plenty of times on stream potentially, if someone was to come up to you right now and say they wanted to be a front-end developer,
mm-hmm.
how would you suggest they go from knowing nothing to being able to actually do something? I'm not saying competent, because competence is quite subjective.
Sure.
You don't have to name like, this isn't like a layup to say like, oh, you should definitely tell them to use roadmap. You don't have to say any names of anything. I'm talking purely like process wise. Like, what would you suggest?
So I don't mind saying the names because I have commands in my chat for this, and I even have one for roadmap. But my first recommendation is Free Code Camp, just because even if they don't want to be a programmer, or even if they don't want to be a front end developer, they're still going to need to get their feet wet. And I think the quickest they can get to seeing some results, the more they're going to get hooked on it. So I recommend HTML because it's done right in your browser. You don't have to set up an IDE. You don't have to install some CLI tool to do a hello world with C or something, right? There's so much less to do to actually start seeing the results of changing code. And from there, once they're hooked, I actually do recommend roadmap for the more specific career path that they care about. So yeah, I totally have a command for roadmap. I have a command for Free Code Camp. I do recommend Free Code Camp most of the time. But I also want to point out there's another one that's really good that is more of like a boot camp kind of thing, but it's free, and it's called 100 Devs, and that's put on by Leon Noel, and just awesome dude, really supportive. I remember at least during COVID, he had 5,000 or 6,000 people just watching his boot camp content on Twitch, and yeah, it was really cool.
Wow, I feel like I would have heard of them. I'm not going to Google it now, but I feel like I would have heard of them. I definitely should have heard of them. Is it Yellow and Black?
No, I don't think so. You might be thinking of the
JavaScript one, probably.
The Yellow and Black, that might be Learn with Jason. He's pretty good.
Probably. It's interesting what you said though about the fast feedback to get them hooked.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a problem in everything. In learning, in any goal of anything, is if you say I think I did a random YouTube video yesterday or something where I was explaining I'm getting married in 3 months.
Oh, congratulations!
And, thank you. And classic marriage thing. Let's lose a bit of weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just saying to yourself, back then it was 5 months. Saying to yourself, "Oh, you've got 5 months to lose weight for your wedding." Days will start to pass and you haven't done anything. So you need to be okay, well, tomorrow, let's not eat any rubbish all day. And at the end of the day, we'll put a tick on the board. Awesome. I feel good. I have a tick. I have some short feedback. And then that will just continue. And before you know it, the ticks equal a whole week, equal a whole month. Before you know it, 5 months have passed and your goal has just appeared in front of you. So I feel like I see it a lot in the roadmap Discord. A lot of people are sort of looking way too far ahead. They want to be X or Y, and they're up here. And really you should be looking down here, learning the simple stuff first, getting your foot in the door somewhere, and then slowly appearing up there. Because I think a lot of people don't talk about this part. They all focus on this bit up here. They all see people, like you, like on stream, and they think they can just like learn a couple of things and then be that.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes time, right? It's
Yeah.
not something that can just appear in front of you. So, yeah.
Yeah, the only way I got good at snowboarding was doing it basically every day. Because I'm just that kind of person. There are some people with like natural talent where they can be amazing really quick. Sure. But me, I had to snowboard every day. I had to like make things, automatic, right? Like, certain tricks, things like that. They needed to be, instant. Like I can do it every time. That's how I got good at snowboarding. I think programming is the same way. I think anything you want to do and be good at, you have to do consistently. And when you were talking about like the procrastination, I even have a quote we say on stream, like procrastinate. I haven't even begun to procrastinate yet. That's a fun one. But basically, with what you were talking about, like the steps, there's even like a good analogy or like a cartoon I've seen drawn before where it shows like two different people. One person is climbing a ladder and the rungs are really far. And you might make a lot of progress by reaching up real high, but it means that if you miss it, you're way back down again. Whereas like the person that does like the ladder with the rungs closer together makes more progress. If they mess up, they're only going back a little bit. It might feel slower, but you're able to actually like get more done because you're consistent with it.
Mm. And that's getting clipped, by the way.
Sure.
Just letting you know that.
No worries.
I think a great thing that you mentioned snowboarding. I think an important factor there that is assumed is that you enjoyed snowboarding.
Oh, yeah.
Like, very much so. You had a passion to do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big problem now of people wanting to get into software engineering for the money or the remote benefits and stuff, right? I think that can be a mistake. Like you said yourself, like in them 10 years of snowboarding, you were just getting by. You were doing it for the passion of doing it. And I assume now part of the reason you're a dev advocate whose job it is to create content is due to passion doing it, right? If you don't have the passion, it's just, that's what happens. That's how you get burnout. That's how you get like not wanting to get up on Monday mornings, right? Like I can't remember the last time I had that feeling, that true feeling of like not wanting to go to work on a Monday morning.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Last time I felt that, I was a dishwasher. So yeah, for sure. I mean, no one likes like driving into work, of course, right? Like everyone can dread that part. But I think there's a big thing where like, at least in my generation, it may still be a thing where people were, if you're trying to make good money, you could be a doctor, a nurse, or a lawyer, right? And a lot of people get into that and realize that they don't actually like it. And that's just a miserable way to spend a very large portion of your life, right? Think about it, like 40 hours a week. There's only so many waking hours you have every week. Yeah. Why waste that doing something you don't like doing?
Exactly. Well, they were pretty good words to end on, I'd say.
Sure.
Cool, Chris. It was great meeting you in person.
Yeah, this was awesome.
We've only been like Twitter DMs for now, but I will definitely be catching the stream.
Cool, thank you.
Going forward, 100%. But yeah, awesome. I will end the stream now, and sure. I'll hopefully catch you sometime, and I'll catch everyone else like next Thursday for that stream.
Yep. Everyone on stream, thank you for watching. This was great, and yeah, thank you for having me on. This was so much fun.
All good. Go check